Happy June!
Hi, everybody. Long time no see. Been a few weeks, but hope that you all are well.
Chris is stateside again. He brought chocolate.
I have been stateside again for a week and a half.
Yes.
I wasn't gone nearly that long.
No.
I was gone for 5 whole nights.
But he brought back chocolate.
I did bring back chocolate.
I'm a happy wife.
I did something right.
He also brought me oil. Spanish olive oil. Which is why we're going to Spain tonight.
Yep, we'll be talking about Spain this evening. Because, yeah, Spain is pretty cool. Specifically went to Bilbao. Yes, I brought you back t-shirts too. Mm-hmm. I brought you back
and ducks.
And duck. I brought you back all kinds of little goodies. I brought you back just about anything that wasn't nailed down. Not quite. That's a little bit of an exaggeration.
That is an exaggeration.
But.
And yes, that was Mr. Nico who just passed through Patrick.
So.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm enjoying it. It is fading out. It used to be much brighter, but I'm going silver at the end of the week. So I can eventually go back to red. Have to work color code, the color circle properly here.
And hi, Dana, as well. I see you there popping in on the chat. Glad to have you both here this evening. But yeah, so, yeah, we got a lot to talk about. This is going to be a long script.
It is.
It was hard to...
Let's just say once I started researching, let's just say I think we need to take a trip to Spain and do some videos there in person.
Well, I did do a video, which I just posted, was it just last night? 2 nights ago?
Last night.
Okay.
Because I saw it this morning.
Okay. So, yes, I did just post a...
but I'm thinking Barcelona and Madrid.
Yes, need to do all of that.
Because we're going to talk about them tonight.
Yes. So, but yeah, I posted one reel, and I think I got another one in the making. So, yeah, we'll see when I get around to that. But, yeah, I got some stuff to stitch together. But in the meantime, we have this episode for you tonight. Hope that you, hope that y'all have been well over the last few weeks. Welcome to basically almost summer.
Almost summer.
I know.
Close enough.
Close enough. It's getting warm and all of that kind of stuff. So
we're going to get back to the 90s.
Days are long, all that good stuff.
Nico saying hi. What is Patrick's comment? I can't quite
be doing the circle of the moon with silver hair for a bit.
I figure it's a nice little preview of what I've got to come in front of me.
And thank you, Patrick. I'm glad you enjoyed the video. Yeah, that was a fun one. Hopefully I got another fun one for everybody, but yeah, so for tonight, Haunted Spain.
Yes.
Do you want to do the intro?
Yeah, we can do the intro.
Or do you, or you want? Yeah, go for it.
You're about to eat chocolate.
Yes, so. I am.
Spain is a country of sunlight, stone, and old stories. The cities glow with art, music, markets, and crowded plazas. Its mountains hold a ruined castle, a legend older than memory. The churches, the theaters, the palaces, and the villages carry centuries of triumph, devotion, violence, grief, and love. But after dark, Spain seems to rise beneath the visible one, a different Spain. In Aragon, the ruined village still stands where a war left it broken. In Madrid, a museum built from an old hospital keeps uneasy company with one of the world's most haunting paintings. In Barcelona, a metro platform waits in the dark, and a market may still remember the songs of vanished monks. Beyond the cities, haunted castles, cursed riders, waterfalls wrapped in folklore. It reminds us that not every ghost here needs a house. Some haunt the landscapes. Some haunt legends. And some haunt the silence that was left behind. Tonight, we're traveling through Spain by way of its shadows, where the history and the folklore meet, and where the past doesn't always stay buried. Yeah.
So we're going to start south of the Rogota in the dry countryside of Aragon, where there is a town where the clock stopped in 1937. The streets are still there. The churches are still standing, at least partially. Crumbling walls lean over narrow alleys filled with silence and dust. Bullet holes still scar the stone. Wind pushes through roofless homes where families once gathered for dinner, where children once played beneath church bells that no longer ring for the living. This is Belchite, one of the most haunting places in Spain. And unlike many ghost stories, the tragedy here is not legend, it is history. Before the Spanish Civil War, Belchite was a working town with centuries of history behind it. The settlement dated back to the Middle Ages and had survived wars, invasions, and political upheaval long before the 20th century arrived. By the 1930s, several thousand people lived there among churches, plazas, and stone homes built beneath the relentless Aragonese sun. Then, in the summer of 1937, the war arrived at Belchite's doorstep. Republican forces advancing south towards Zaragoza targeted the town, which was under nationalist control. What followed became one of the most infamous battles of the war. For nearly 2 weeks, Belchite transformed into a battlefield of artillery fire, collapsing buildings, sniper positions, and brutal street-to-street fighting. Today, historians still debate exact casualty figures, and many stories from the battle survive only through fragmented eyewitness accounts. Some details have become tangled with folklore over the decades, but what is beyond dispute is that civilians suffered terribly there. Standing in the ruins today, it is difficult not to imagine the fear that must have consumed the town as bombardments reduced entire blocks to rubble. Water became scarce. Buildings burned. Families hid wherever they could. Survivors later described bodies left in the street beneath the summer heat. Even now, Belchite does not feel like a place that fully belongs to the present. And perhaps that is because, in some ways, it doesn't. After the war, General Francisco Franco's regime chose not to fully rebuild the original town. A new Belchite was eventually constructed nearby, while the ruins of the old village were left standing as a visible scar of the conflict. The destroyed town became both memorial and propaganda symbol, frozen in time beneath the dictatorship that followed the war. When you walk through the old Belchite now, that history hangs over everything. The silence is what people remember first. Not the ruins themselves, not even the damage. The silence. Visitors often describe an unnatural stillness settling over the streets, interrupted only by the sound of wind slipping through shattered windows or birds circling above the remains of the churches. The old church of San Agustin still towers over the town, its damaged bell tower rising above the wreckage like a monument to something unfinished. And according to local stories, the dead may not have fully left. Belchite has earned a reputation as one of the most haunted locations in Spain. Farmers living near the ruins have long shared stories about hearing distant voices echoing through empty streets after sunset. Visitors report sudden temperature drops, strange shadows appearing in photographs, and the unsettling sensation of being watched while walking alone through the town. Others claim to hear sounds that should not exist anymore: the crack of gunfire, marching boots, distant screaming. Some say the church bells ring despite the tower standing abandoned for decades. There are even stories of ghostly cries drifting through the ruins at dusk. One of the most repeated legends tells of a child's voice calling out for its mother somewhere in the empty streets. Of course, skeptics argue that Belchite's reputation feeds the imagination, and it is true that places carrying this much grief can shape the way people experience them. A ruined town at night has a way of making every sound feel significant, but even skeptics tend to admit something feels different there. And honestly, I think that's part of what makes Belchite so unsettling, is that the paranormal almost feels secondary. The ruins themselves are the haunting. Because unlike fictional ghost towns built for tourists, Belchite remains visibly wounded. The destruction was never cleaned away. Roofs still gape open towards the sky. Walls remain split apart by explosions that happened nearly 90 years ago. The town exists in a strange space between preservation and decay. You are not walking through a recreation, you are walking through aftermath. In recent years, access to Belchite has become more controlled in an effort to preserve the fragile ruins. Guided tours now lead visitors through the shattered streets during both daytime and nighttime visits. Film crews have also used the location repeatedly because of its stark atmosphere, with productions drawn to the town's almost unreal appearance. But for many people, the most unsettling moments happen when the tour grows quiet, when everyone stops talking, and when the guide's flashlight drifts across a broken church wall or an abandoned doorway. And for just a second, it becomes easy to picture what this place once sounded like before the war swallowed it whole. Church bells, footsteps, conversations through open windows, children playing in the square. Then the wind moves through the ruins again, and the illusion disappears. There's something else worth saying about Belchite, too, especially when telling stories like this. Places tied to civil wars carry a different kind of ghost story. These are not ancient legends worn smooth by centuries of retelling. The wounds connected to the Spanish Civil War remain politically and emotionally sensitive within Spain for generations. Many families carried memories of executions, disappearances, and divided loyalties long after the fighting ended. So when people describe Belchite as haunted, I do not think that they are always talking about literal ghosts. Sometimes they are talking about memory, about grief, about the feeling that violence leaves behind something in a place that never fully fades. And maybe that is why Belchite continues to disturb people so deeply. Not because visitors hear phantom bells and not because shadows move between the ruined buildings, but because the town forces you to confront the reality that entire communities can vanish while their absence somehow remains tangible. Today, the old village still stands beneath the Aragonese sky, silent except for the wind. And as daylight fades across the broken churches and shattered homes, it becomes easier to understand why some people believe the dead still wander there. Because in Belchite, the past does not feel buried. It feels waiting.
Yeah, so we started dark.
Yes. Yes, we did.
Yep.
But
it is a haunting reminder, especially in, as you said, the towns with the civil wars, the countries with the civil wars. It's a different haunting. Mm-hmm. Multiple meanings of the word there. All right, so from the ruins of Belchite, we're going to move to a place where war left its scars in stone, to a place where war, suffering, and memory are preserved in paint. In Madrid, one of Spain's most greatest museums holds masterpieces of the 20th century. But before it became home to modern art, the building served a very different purpose. And some believe that its older history is still lingering in the halls. So we're going to be going to Reina Sofia Museum in the heart of Madrid. Inside the vast halls of the Museo Nacional Central de Arte de Reina Sofia, I do not speak Spanish. I apologize in advance.
Neither one of us really do.
You're better than I am.
No.
You're at least trying to learn.
I'm trying.
Hang some of the most celebrated works of modern art in this world. Visitors travel here to see masterpieces by Salvador Dali, by Joan Miro, and above all else, they come to stand before Guernica, Pablo Picasso's enormous and deeply unsettling portrayal of war, suffering, and civilian destruction. Every year, thousands of people pass through these galleries in near silence, staring into paintings filled with grief, fear, and fractured humanity. But according to the stories surrounding the museum, the artwork may not be the only things lingering inside of this building. Because long ago, before it became a world-famous museum, the Reina Sofia was a hospital, and so many who entered its doors never left. The institution's origins stretch back into the 16th century, when King Philip II commissioned the Hospital de San Carlos along Cala Santa Isabel in Madrid. It was designed not only to treat the sick, but also a shelter for the poor and destitute. By the 18th century, the hospital had grown severely overcrowded, and thousands of patients passed through its halls every year. Then in 1965, the hospital finally closed. For years, the enormous structure sat largely abandoned, its corridors emptied, dust settled across the rooms once filled with patients, nurses, and the dying. Eventually, the Spanish government restored the building, transforming it into the National Arts Center that opened in the 1980s and expanded in the decades that followed. But during the renovations in the early 1990s, workers reportedly uncovered human remains buried beneath parts of the structure, believed to date back to the building's centuries as a hospital. From there, rumors spread of additional discoveries in sealed spaces below the museum, though many of the more sensational claims are difficult to separate from the urban legend. And that uncertainty is part of what makes the haunting stories surrounding the Reina Sofia so compelling. Because unlike ruined castles or abandoned monasteries, this is not a forgotten place. It's alive. Brightly lit galleries now stand where suffering once unfolded. Tourists admire modern art in rooms connected to the centuries of illness and death. Elevators glide through spaces where patients were once carried out on stretchers. The building did not lose its past when it became a museum. It simply layered something new over it. Workers at the museum have shared strange stories for decades. Security guards have reported hearing doors slam shut in hallways long after closing time. Cleaners arriving before dawn describe glimpsing figures sitting quietly on benches, only for them to vanish moments later. Others speak of whispers drifting through the silent corridors or alarms triggering for no clear reason. And some of the most persistent stories involve the museum's elevators. According to employees, lifts have occasionally moved between floors despite supposedly being inactive or disconnected during maintenance. Whether these incidents were technical failures, misunderstandings, or something strange depends on entirely who is telling the story. There's also reports of the former chapel areas and underground corridors beneath the museum. Staff, visitors, and paranormal investigators have claimed to experience sudden cold spots, shadowy figures, the sensation of being followed through parts of the building that are rarely seen by the public. Among the most enduring legends are the stories of the ghostly nuns seen walking through the corridors late at night. Witnesses describe them as appearing at the far end of hallways before fading from sight, sometimes accompanied by the faint sound of bells or distant singing. Like many haunting stories attached to historic buildings, these accounts are impossible to verify fully. Yet they persist, perhaps because of the setting itself is making them feel believable. There is something inherently unsettling about hospitals from another era, places where medicine was limited. Epidemics spread quickly, and the poor often died anonymously. The Reina Sofia carries that history quietly beneath its polished modern identity. And somehow, that makes the museum's collection feel even heavier, especially when standing before Guernica, painted in response to the bombing of the Basque town during the Spanish Civil War. Picasso's masterpiece is filled with twisted faces, panic, broken bodies, and grief. It demands confrontation. Visitors often fall silent in front of it, absorbing the pain embedded in the canvas. And in a strange way, it feels perfectly housed here. A painting about suffering hanging inside a building that was shaped by centuries of it. Today, the Reina Sofia remains one of Spain's most cultural landmarks. Thousands pass through the halls every day without witnessing anything unusual. But others leave convinced that something unseen still lingers here at the museum. Not violent, not malicious, just present. Late in the evening, after the crowds disappear and the galleries finally grow quiet, the Reina Sofia becomes something very different than during the day. Not simply a museum, but a place where art, memory, and death still seem to walk the same halls together.
The Reina Sofia reminds us that buildings can change their purpose without fully escaping their past. But not every haunting in Madrid is tied to suffering in a hospital ward. Some belong to places built for beauty, performance, and applause. And in one of the city's most beloved old theaters, the ghost story is less a tale of terror than a lingering echo from the stage. At night, the old theaters of Madrid feel suspended out of time. Long after the crowds have disappeared into the narrow streets, velvet curtains hang beneath dim lights. Rows of red seats face a silent stage where laughter, music, heartbreak, and applause once echoed night after night. And in the heart of Madrid, few theaters carry more ghost stories than Teatro Lara, affectionately known as La Reina because of its ornate interior and intimate size. Teatro Lara first opened in 1880 during a golden age of Madrid theater. Built by businessman Candido Lara, the venue quickly became one of the city's cultural jewels, attracting fashionable audiences beneath glittering chandeliers and painted ceilings. Unlike the massive opera houses of Europe, Teatro Lara felt personal, elegant, almost hidden. A place where performers stood close enough for audiences to see every expression beneath the stage lights. Over the decades, some of Spain's most celebrated actors passed through its doors, but among all the legends tied to the theater, one name rises above all the others: Lola Membrives. According to the stories surrounding Teatro Lara, Lola never truly left the stage. Born in Argentina in 1885, Lola Membrives became one of the greatest actresses of Spanish-language theater during the early 20th century. She performed across Spain and Latin America and built a reputation for talent, intensity, and commanding presence. On stage, she carried herself with the kind of confidence that could silence an entire theater. Teatro Lara became closely associated with her career during Madrid's theatrical golden years. Even today, the theater still contains a room named in Lola's honor. And maybe that's why the ghost stories attached to Teatro Lara feel less frightening than melancholy. They do not describe a violent haunting. They describe someone who loved the theater too much to leave it behind. The theater itself nearly vanished once already. During the economic struggles of the late 20th century, Teatro Lara fell into decline. Attendance dropped. The building deteriorated. For a time, one of Madrid's great old theaters seemed at risk of disappearing beneath modernization and neglect. But after restoration work in the 1990s, Teatro Lara reopened and reclaimed its place within the city's cultural life. Not long afterward, the stories began spreading again. Actors rehearsing late at night reported hearing footsteps crossing the stage after everyone else had gone home. Workers described doors opening and closing on their own inside empty corridors. Others claimed lights flickered during productions, almost as though the theater itself was reacting to what unfolded on stage. And according to theater lore, Lola Membrives may still be at the center of it all. Some employees have claimed to feel an unseen presence backstage, especially near the dressing rooms once associated with the actress. Visitors speak of sudden cold spots or the sensation of being watched while touring the older parts of the theater. A few have even reported glimpsing the figure of a woman seated before a mirror inside an empty dressing room before the image vanishes. Then there are the stories about her voice. Late at night, after performances have ended and the audience has gone home, some claim faint singing can still be heard drifting through the darkened theater. Not loud enough to make out clearly, just distant enough to stop people in their tracks. Of course, theaters naturally invite superstition. Old buildings creak, curtains move in drafts, stage lights flicker. In places like Teatro Lara, imagination and reality blur easily together. But even skeptics tend to admit that theaters carry a unique emotional energy. Every performance leaves something behind, whether it's excitement, fear, hope, or heartbreak. For more than a century, thousands of people stepped onto the stage at Teatro Lara, hoping at least for a moment to become unforgettable. Most are gone now. Their voices faded long ago into the walls and rafters. Yet some stories insist that Lola Membrives remained, not out of anger nor out of vengeance, but because the theater was the place where she felt most alive. Today, Teatro Lara still glows warmly against the streets of Madrid. Audiences continue filling the velvet seats beneath the chandeliers just as they did generations ago. Music, comedy, and drama still echo across the same stage where Lola once stood beneath the lights. Late at night, when rehearsals end and the stage grows quiet, the old theater settles once more into shadow and silence. Then somewhere beyond the curtains, if the stories are true, a faint voice still sings softly to an empty room. You want to go.
You know
Of course you want to go.
I love a good haunted
I mean,
show.
I want to go. I love checking it out.
I won't understand a word they're saying in whatever show, but I'll still enjoy it.
I did catch a little, not theater, but I caught a
Concert.
Recital, if you will.
Yes.
It was a soprano with a piano accompaniment, just a very simple performance. Didn't understand a word she said, but wow, was it beautiful.
He brought me back a clip, and I listened to just a small piece, and I'm like, oh, I would have loved to have heard that live.
And that audio clip did not nearly do it justice either.
Yeah. It was amazing as an audio clip. It would have been even more amazing in person. So, yeah. From the footlights of the Teatro Lara, Madrid's ghosts lead us towards another kind of stage entirely, the grand rooms of a 19th century palace. There, beneath the marble, gilding, and elegance, one of the city's most famous legends has continued to whisper for generations. Whether the story is true or not may matter less than the way that it has refused to leave. Would you like my lap, sir? You must choose, sir. My lap or daddy's, not both. He literally had one set of legs on me, one set of legs on Chris. He must have us both. He must have it all. Oh, there we go. Almost. Are we almost over here? I've got 3 legs. Can I have the 4th, sir? Can we come this way? Come this way. All the way over. There we go. Now you need to lay down. I'm asking a whole lot here. Totally asking a lot.
Yeah, get back to reading.
All right. In Madrid's Plaza de Cibeles, the Placino de Linares rises with a kind of elegance that seems designed to hide secrets. Its facade is grand and orderly. The rooms are filled with marble, gilded ceilings, painted allegories, exotic woods, French lamps, and all the polished signs of a 19th century wealth. Today, the palace is home to Casa de America, the cultural institution that gives the building the bright public life. But beneath that restored beauty, Madrid has long whispered about something darker. The palace was built for José de Moraga y Relid and Ramuda. I'm trying to read his pronunciation here.
Moraga and Reolid.
The Marquis of Linares. There we go. They were among the wealthiest figures in Spain, and they began living there in the 1880s. Even as the palace decoration continued for years, that seemed to announce that everything in their fortune could purchase. It showed refinement, status, permanence. But legends rather gather around those happy houses. So let's take a look, according to the darker side. A story that still clings to this palace is Jose and Ramonda's marriage carried a terrible secret. The tale claims that Jose's father once was involved with Ramonda's mother, and that after the couple married, they discovered that they were half-siblings. Whether the story contains any truth is deeply disputed. Historians have found no firm evidence proving that the scandal at the heart of the legend. And yet, the rumor survives. In some versions, the couple appealed to the church for permission to remain together, though under strict conditions. In darker versions, they had a daughter in secret, a child who could not be acknowledged without destroying the family's reputation. A child who, according to the most tragic form of the legend, was killed and hidden somewhere inside the palace. There's no proof that this child existed, no proof of a murder, no proof of a body sealed inside the walls. But the absence of proof does not end stories. It may have actually made it stronger. Because the palace became a kind of place where rumor could breathe. A palace closed away from ordinary life. A house of wealth and silence. A building that later declined, sat abandoned, and seemed to collect shadows in its unused rooms. By the time restoration work returned the palace to the public life in the late 20th century, the legend had already become part of its identity. Visitors and workers began speaking of whispers in empty rooms, shadows moving where no one stood, the sound of a child's voice drifting through the halls built for adults who had once cared very much about appearances. Some said a little girl could be heard singing nursery rhymes. Others said she called her parents who would never answer. In 1990, the story took a whole new life when recordings presented as an electronic voice phenomenon were published in the Spanish magazine Tempio. The alleged voices were said to belong to a family connected to the palace. One phrase attributed to a child became especially famous. I don't have a mama. It's exactly the kind of detail that transforms a rumor into a haunting. Skeptics dismissed the recordings, believers heard grief, and Madrid kept telling the story. That may be the most unsettling thing about the Palace Linares. Not only a ghostly child definitely wanders its room, but the palace seems unable to escape the sorrow people have placed inside of it. Every grand staircase becomes part of the legend. Every closed door suggests a hidden room. Every echo sounds like a confession that never fully arrives. In that sense, the Palace Linares is not simply haunted by a girl, or by Jose or Romalda, or by any scandaled whisper across generations. It's haunted by the possibility of them, by what might have happened, by what people feared had happened, by the way grief can attach itself to beauty until even gold ceilings and polished marble begin to feel oppressive. Today, the palace still stands in one of Madrid's busiest squares, surrounded by traffic, tourists, and city lights. It has been restored, reopened, and returned to usefulness. But the stories do not always leave when the buildings are repaired. And inside Palacio Linares, beneath the splendor, the old rumor still moves quietly from room to room. Yes, sir. You are restless, just like your sister was. There we go. Good boy.
Got Alex has joined us.
Hey, Alex.
And Beverly's here too.
Hey, Beverly. I hope you all are enjoying the stories. These were quite fun to research.
They were, absolutely.
And I found so many that we're going to be doing another Spanish.
Yes. Yep. We got another one in the near future.
Yes.
But apparently Alex's mother is originally from Spain.
Woo!
Yep.
Woo-hoo.
Has not been able to visit herself, at least not yet.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, highly recommend it. It exceeded all expectations.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lovely trip. I'm sorry to rub it in.
That's okay. Marcia rubs it in too. In fact, when I told her I was doing Haunted Spain, she goes, "Hey, do you have this story?" And I said, "Yes, actually, we do."
So, after the palaces and theaters of Madrid, we travel east to Barcelona, where the ghost stories descend underground. The next haunting does not belong to a ruined castle or a candlelit room. It belongs to tiled platforms, surveillance cameras, tunnel wind, and the strange loneliness of waiting for a train after dark. Beneath Barcelona, the city has another life. Above ground, the streets are filled with sunlight, traffic, architecture, voices, and movement. But below the surface, everything changes. Fluorescent lights hum over tiled platforms. Trains rush out of black tunnels with a blast of air, then vanish again into the darkness. Footsteps echo differently underground. Voices carry, then disappear. Late at night, when the crowds thin and the platforms begin to empty, the Barcelona metro can feel less like transportation and more like a place between worlds. Among all the ghost stories attached to the city's underground, one station has earned the darkest reputation: Rocafort. Located on Line 1, the Red Line, Rocafort Station opened in the 1920s as part of Barcelona's expanding metro system. By day, it's just another stop in a busy city used by commuters, students, workers, and visitors moving through the Eixample district. But according to Barcelona's urban legends, Rocafort changes after dark. For decades, the station has carried a reputation for unease. Some call it cursed, though that word should be handled carefully. What is true is that the station has been associated with tragedy, including deaths on the tracks over the years. The details are often repeated in exaggerated form, but the emotional weight behind the stories is real enough. Places connected to sudden death tend to gather silence around them, even when the world keeps moving. Night workers have reportedly spoken of strange activity on the platforms after the last trains have gone. Some describe hearing footsteps when no passengers should still be inside. Others say they have seen figures standing near the edge of the platform or moving along the tracks, only for the shapes to vanish when approached. The most unsettling stories involve the station's surveillance cameras. According to local lore, staff monitoring the screens have sometimes seen people walking along the platform after closing time, even though the station appeared empty when checked in person. On the monitor, the figures seem real, human, present, but when workers look directly into the station, no one is there. That is the kind of ghost story that feels made for the modern world. Not a candlelit apparition in a castle corridor, not a white figure drifting through a ruined chapel. A ghost caught on a security camera walking through a public transit station beneath one of Europe's busiest cities. There's something especially eerie about that image because metro stations already feel haunted by repetition. Every day, thousands of people pass through the same platforms without leaving a name behind. They wait, they stare into tunnels, they disappear into trains. For a few minutes, strangers share the same underground space, then scatter into the city above. Maybe that is why ghost stories cling so easily to places like Rocafort. They are built for arrivals and departures, for people appearing suddenly, then vanishing. One of the softer, more sorrowful stories attached to the station tells of a child seen playing with a ball on or near the platform. The story is usually told as a fleeting vision rather than a violent encounter. A small figure glimpsed for a moment, a ball rolling where no child should be, then nothing but the ordinary emptiness of the station. But the image remains. A child and a ball, a platform too close to the dark, and then the sudden arrival of silence. Rocafort is not the only station in Barcelona with ghost stories attached to it. Other parts of the metro have their own legends, especially abandoned or unused spaces. Gaudi Station, for example, was built but never fully opened to the public, and passengers sometimes claim they can glimpse shadowy figures waiting there through the train windows as they pass. Still, Rocafort remains the name most often spoken when Barcelona's haunted metro is mentioned. Perhaps because it feels so ordinary. There's no ruined castle or village, no ancient monastery crumbling into the mountains. It's just a station. Lights, tiles, tracks, timetables, the everyday machinery of city life. And that makes the stories feel closer. Almost everyone knows the feeling of standing alone on a platform at night, watching the tunnel for headlights that have not yet appeared, a sound behind you, a movement on the monitor, a shape at the far end of the platform where no one was standing before. Then the train arrives, the doors open, the moment breaks. By morning, Rocafort is ordinary again. Passengers hurry through with phones in hand, barely looking up. The city moves above and below, just as it always has. But late at night, when the final trains have passed and the platform lights reflect off empty rails, some say Rocafort becomes something else. A station where not everybody waiting underground is waiting for a train.
Soul train. Sorry.
How to break the moment with 2 words. Oh.
Can't tell me I'm not wrong.
You're not wrong.
All right. From Barcelona's underground, we come back into the noise and the color of the city. But even in one of Barcelona's busiest markets, where the day is filled with food, voices, and motion, the past is never completely gone. Beneath La Boqueria's bright stalls, the legend says something older still remembers how to sing. Yes, I seem to have found the singing ghosts.
What do you have a knack for? Anything theatrical.
By day, La Boqueria is one of the most vivid places in Barcelona. Just off of La Rambla, beneath the ironwork and bright market lights, crowds move between stalls piled with fruit, seafood, cured meats, spices, sweets, and fresh produce. Vendors call out prices, tourists stop for photographs, locals move through with practiced focus. It's a loud, colorful, fragrant, and alive location. which makes a ghost story attached to it especially strange. Because according to legend, beneath all of that commerce and noise, something older is still remembered. Before the market became one of Barcelona's great food landmarks, the area was tied to religious life. The market's roots stretch back centuries, with early meat stalls appearing near the old city gate as far back as the 1200s. But the modern market eventually grew over the land that was once associated with the convent de Saint Joseph, a religious house connected to the barefoot Carmelites. And that vanished convent is where the haunting begins. The story is usually set in 1835 during the time of deep unrest in Barcelona. The city was under pressure from political conflict, economic frustration, and rising anti-clerical feeling. Religious institutions were increasingly seen by some not only as spiritual authorities, but also as symbols of wealth and power. That tension would eventually erupt into violence, but folklore rarely begins with politics. It begins with a warning. According to the legend, the monks of the convent had grown careless in their religious duties. They had neglected prayer and failed to properly honor Our Lady of Carmen, their patroness. One young monk, troubled by what he saw, warned the others that their lack of devotion could not continue. But in the story, his warnings were ignored, and then one night the convent woke to chanting. At first it was distant, low, almost like a wind moving through stone corridors. But the voices grew clearer, drawing monks out from their cells toward the church. There in the darkness they found a choir waiting for them. Not living monks, dead ones. The figures were said to be skeletal friars risen from their tombs, gathered in the church to sing psalms in the middle of the night. They did not attack, they did not speak. They simply chanted, their voices filling the convent with warning that felt older than language. When the singing ended, the monks lit candles and followed the ghostly procession back towards the cemetery. The tombs were open, waiting. One by one, the dead friars returned to their graves, and the stones closed over them again. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be lingering around.
It's a pretty cool story.
It's a cool story, but the fact that the graves closed themselves again, that's the part that makes me kind of go, that way, please. Anyway, in one version of the legend, when the monks returned to the church, they found the young monk who had warned them laying dead where the ghostly choir had sung. The details shift from telling to telling, but the message remains the same. A warning had come, and it had not been enough. Soon after, history overtook the convent, and in July of 1835, amid broader unrest in Barcelona, the convents and religious buildings were attacked and burned. The destruction was not the result of a simple incident, though later tellings sometimes reduce it to anger after a bullfight. The real causes were more complicated, rooted in years of political tension and social resentment. Whatever forces drove the violence, the result for the convent of Saint Joseph was devastating. The building was destroyed, the religious community had occupied, and the site vanished. Afterward, Barcelona changed to the land where the convent had stood, the market expanded. The sacred gave way to the practical. The stone cells and cloisters disappeared beneath the stalls, counters, and voices and trade. And maybe that's the contrast as to why the ghost story survives. According to legend, every year on July 15th, the eve of Our Lady of Carmen, the old voices return. When the market is empty, when the last stalls have closed and the crowds have drained back into the city, some say footsteps can still be heard moving through the darkened space. Not the steps of late workers or wandering tourists, but something slower, something ceremonial. Then comes the chanting, low voices rising when the convent once stood, a ghostly psalm drifting through the market that by daylight belongs entirely to the living. Most visitors to the market come for food, photographs, a sensory rush, Barcelona at its most immediate. They are not thinking of banished monks, open tombs, or a convent burned during a troubled century. But cities are layered places. A market can cover a convent. Noises can cover silence. Commerce can cover grief. And still, at the right hour, the older story may press upward. By morning, the stalls open again, the fruit is stacked, the fish is packed in ice, and voices fill the aisles. But the legend says that once a year before dawn, beneath all that life, the dead still remember the song.
We love a good market.
We do.
A haunted market is really cool.
Yes. And you know us, we love our food.
Yes. Leaving Barcelona behind, we now move deeper into Catalonia, from city streets to stone walls and mountain views. At Cardona, history does not sit behind glass. It rises above the valley as a castle, a fortress, and now a hotel, where guests can sleep inside the past. But according to legend, one room may not belong entirely to the living. Above the town of Cardona in Catalonia, the castle still watches from its hill. It rises over the Cardona River Valley and the old salt lands beyond. Part fortress, part monument, part hotel now, with stone walls that have seen more centuries than any guest could comfortably imagine. The earliest fortifications on the hill are traditionally linked to the 9th century, and over time, Cardona became one of the great strongholds of Catalonia. Its lords were so powerful they were sometimes remembered as kings without crowns. Today, the castle is part of Spain's Parador system, a network of hotels, house, and historic buildings where the past is not merely displayed but slept inside. At Cardona, guests can walk through stone corridors, look out over the valley, and spend the night inside a building where history feels close enough to touch. And according to legend, some of that history has never checked out. There are stories of older spirits in the castle, prisoners, tormented souls, figures attached to its darker medieval uses. But the haunting most closely associated with the Parador de Cardona belongs to a young woman in white, a figure said to wander the halls at night, still bound to the castle by a love story that ended in a tower. Her name in the legend is Adalis. The story has been told in different forms, and it should be understood as folklore rather than established history. But like many legends, it reveals something about the fears and boundaries of the world that created it. According to the tale, Adalis was the daughter of a powerful noble family connected to Catalonia. During a gathering at the castle, she met a young Muslim prince often named Abdallah. Their affection crossed lines of religion, family allegiance, and political expectations. And in a medieval society shaped by honor, power, and inheritance, that made their love dangerous. They met in secret, in the castle gardens, in shadowed passages, in stolen moments far from the eyes of those who would have ended the romance before it could take root. But secrets in castles rarely remain secrets for long. When Adalis's family discovered the relationship, the legend says they were furious. Her father had other plans for her, including a marriage that would preserve status, alliance, and reputation. Once rumors of her love for Abdallah spread, those plans collapsed. Shame, anger, and political embarrassment gathered around the young woman until the castle that had been her home became her prison. According to the story, Adalis was locked inside the Torre Mignona, one of the castle's towers. There, she was given only bread and water. Some versions say the servant sent to bring her food could not speak to her, leaving her completely cut off from comfort, conversation, and hope. Abdallah was forbidden from returning. Adalis was expected to repent, to surrender, to ask forgiveness for loving someone her family considered impossible. But the legend says she never did. She remained in the tower until she died, and after death, the story continues. Some say Adalis still appears within the castle as a young woman dressed in white, moving through corridors after dark. Others say Abdallah never abandoned her either, and that his spirit can still be seen outside the tower, riding through the night in search of the woman he lost. It is the kind of legend that belongs naturally to a castle like Cardona. High walls, a lonely tower, and a view over land that seems to stretch toward another time. But the story did not remain only in the medieval past. It followed the castle into its modern life as a hotel. The most famous haunted room at the Parador de Cardona is said to be room 712, located near the tower associated with Atlas. Guests who stay there have reported hearing whispers in the dark, sensing a presence in the room, or waking with the feeling that they were not alone. Others have claimed to find furniture moved from its original place, sometimes pushed towards the center of the room by morning. There are also stories of taps turning on by themselves and of staff entering the room in pairs because of its reputation. Whether these accounts are folklore, suggestion, or something stranger, room 712 has become part of the castle's identity. That is the curious thing about haunted hotels. Unlike abandoned ruins, they do not ask visitors simply to observe the past. They invite people to unpack their bags inside it, to turn out the lights, to sleep beneath old stone, to listen when the building settles after midnight. At Cardona, the line between hospitality and haunting feels especially thin. A guest can spend the evening admiring the architecture, eating dinner, looking over the valley, and enjoying the romance of a castle restored for modern comfort. Then night comes. The corridor is quiet. The heavy walls hold the cold. The tower stands nearby, dark against the sky. And suddenly, the legend feels less distant. Not because one believes every detail exactly as told, but because the story belongs so completely to the place. Atlas may be folklore, but the emotions inside the tale are very real. Forbidden love, family control, isolation, grief, and the terrible loneliness of being locked away from the life one hoped to live. So when guests speak of whispers in room 712, or furniture shifted while they slept, or water running in the quiet hours before dawn, the mind naturally returns to the tower, to the young woman in white, to the rider below the walls, to a love story that may never have happened exactly as told, but somehow still refuses to leave. By morning, the room is only a hotel room again. The bed is made, the curtains are drawn back, and the valley brightens beyond the window. But in the silence before sunrise, when the castle has not yet fully returned to the world of the living, it is easy to imagine a guest waking in the dark, listening to the faint sound of water from the sink, and wondering whether somewhere nearby, behind stone and legend, Atlas is still waiting.
Where do we go? So far, we already have tickets.
Bucket list.
Bucket list. Bucket list. Room 712.
Room 712.
What did I saw Patrick posted the link.
Yes. And he commented on the song from the last story.
Ah, yes.
Singing Ghosts is pretty cool.
Yes. Cardonia gives us a castle haunted by love, isolation, and a story that may have grown stronger through the centuries of retelling. But Catalonia's folklore does not stop at castle walls. Some legends ride through the mountains themselves, carried by storm clouds, old songs, and the distant sound of hooves where no living rider should be. In the Catalan mountains, the legends do not always stay quietly in the past. Some move with the weather, gathering the dark clouds above the Pyrenees and the wind through the valleys, and the sounds of distant hoofbeats when no rider should be there. Among these, the most famous figure of Catalonian folklore is Comte Arnau, the cursed count. His story, right?
Comte Arnau.
Arnau, excuse me. I threw an N instead of an R. My bad.
I tried to add the pronunciations.
I know. My brain read N.
I tried.
His story belongs not to Barcelona alone, but the wider landscape of Catalonia. Torrepoles, old castles, mountain sanctuaries, medieval roads, and the songs passed down through generations. The legend appears in traditional Catalan ballads, including the Canto del Comte Arnau. Over the time, he became less a single historical person than a symbol of corrupted power, punished forever. There may have been real nobles behind the legend. Some traditions connect the Comte to the Mataplana Castle, a medieval fortress in the Catalan Pyrenees. Others have linked him to historical figures such as Arturo Apollars, and the truth, of course, is uncertain. As many of the old tales, history, geography, moral warnings, have all fused together until you can't clearly separate them. What remains is the story. The story remembers him as a cruel lord. He was powerful, wealthy, feared. And in the legend, he treated the people beneath him as tools for his own ambition. One of the clearest examples is tied to the steps leading up to the Virgin Chapel of the Sanctuary of Monterey. Arnau promised the workers a bag of weed for every step they built toward the sanctuary. They completed the work, but when the labor was done, the Count refused to pay them. It's a small detail compared to the fire and damnation that comes later. But it matters, because in folklore often begins with the injustice of ordinary people, so you understand immediately. A promise broken, labor stolen, power used without shame. The legend then grows darker. One of its more troubling threads involves an abbess connected to Saint Jean de Abysses. The details vary and should be handled very carefully. Some versions say he pursued her. Others say he corrupted or violated a sacred boundary by drawing her into a relationship that broke religious vows and social order. Whatever the exact form, the legend treats the act as another abuse of power, another sign that he took what he wanted without regard for the lives or the souls that he damaged. And then comes the final outrage. According to the tale, after the abbess died, he stole her body and fled into the storm on horseback. The image is pure Gothic folklore. A powerful lord riding through violent weather, carrying the dead, pursued by judgment he does not yet understand. As he crossed the dangerous mountain terrain, the horse lost its footing. He fell, and in many tellings, death came to him suddenly. But death could not release him. That is the heart of the legend. For his sins, he is condemned to ride forever. On stormy nights, he's said to appear on a fiery horse racing across the mountains with a pack of spectral hounds behind him. In some versions, the dogs breathe fire from their mouths and eyes, transforming the punishment into something almost infernal. But the image does not need to be exaggerated to be frightening. A rider in the storm is enough. Who's striking stone? A black shape moving along a ridge. Hounds crying somewhere behind him. No destination, no forgiveness, and no end. The old ballads add another layer of torment. In some versions, he returns after death to the home he left behind, appearing to his wife and daughters, dragging the horror of his punishment into the domestic world he once controlled. It is a brief but chilling reminder that his curse did not affect him alone. Like all abuses of power, the shadow fell across everyone near him. That may be why the Comte endured so powerfully in the Catalan folklore. He is not simply a ghost, he is a judgment. A lord who exploited workers, violated trust, crossed sacred boundaries, and believed himself untouchable, becomes, in the story, the one soul who can never rest. The people he wronged and vanished into history. The sanctuary remains, the castle crumbles, the mountains endure, and he must ride on. There is something deeply satisfying, deeply unsettling in that kind of a legend. It takes the injustices of the medieval world, the kind of ordinary people who could rarely challenge in life, and give them a supernatural answer. If the law could not reach the cruel lord, eternity could. And so when storms pass over the Catalan Pyrenees, the old story returns. Some say that in the mountains near Pamplona, along the routes tied to Montgomery or Saint Jean and the Abysses, one can still sense him. Not clearly, not fully, but as a pressure in the air when the thunder rolls over the ridges. A presence moving where no living rider should be. Perhaps it is only wind. Perhaps it's only the echo of an old song. But the legends survive because they know how to haunt more than buildings. They haunt landscapes. They haunt memory. They turn a moral into sound and shape. Somewhere in the dark, in the mountains, when the weather turns and the night closes in, the cursed Count is said to ride. Not toward redemption, only onward. I wonder if any of the bike races that go through there ever see him or hear him.
That would be cool.
I mean, they happen during the day, but they ride in the storms, and it's not fun.
No. So, after the cursed ride of Comte Arnau, we close with a gentler legend, though not one without sorrow. Far from palaces, theaters, and haunted hotel rooms, there is a waterfall near Navajas where beauty and tragedy share the same name. By day, it belongs to visitors, families, and wedding photographers. But by moonlight, the water is said to remember another bride. Near the small town of Navajas in Spain's Catalonia province, the Palancia River moves through a landscape of stone, greenery, and falling water. There, surrounded by cliffs and trees, is El Salto de la Novia, the bride's jump. The waterfall drops more than 30 meters, filling the air with mist and the steady sound of rushing water. By day, it is a beautiful place. Families come to walk, picnic, and take photographs. Couples come too, drawn by the romance of the name and the natural drama of the falls. But like many beautiful places, El Salto de la Novia carries an older story beneath its charm. According to local folklore, there was once a tradition in the village involving brides and the river. Before marriage, a bride would leap across a narrow part of the Palancia to prove her love and ensure happiness in the life ahead. In the legend, the act was meant to be joyful, witnessed by neighbors and family, a symbolic crossing from one life into another. But one bride never made it across. As the story goes, she stepped toward the river on the day of her wedding, with the village watching and her future waiting on the other side. The rocks were wet. The current moved below her. When she jumped, her foot slipped, and she fell into the water. Her groom rushed after her. Whether he leapt from instinct, love, or desperation, the legend says the river took them both. The same water that was supposed to bless their future carried them away together. Since then, people have said the waterfall is haunted, not violently nor angrily, but mournfully. On quiet nights, some claim to hear voices near the falls, softened by distance in the sound of rushing water. Others say that under moonlight, the river can appear pale and white, like the train of a wedding dress moving through the dark. It's the kind of haunting that feels less like a warning shouted from the past and more like a memory the landscape refuses to surrender. And yet, El Salto de la Novia is not only a place of sorrow. It is what makes the legend so strangely beautiful. Today, people still come there for love. Couples pose for wedding photographs near the water. Visitors stand beneath the cliffs and admire the same falls that folklore turned tragic. Children play nearby. Families spread blankets in the sun. The place has not become frozen in grief. Instead, the story has softened into the scenery. The bride's jump is still a cautionary tale about risk, devotion, and how quickly joy can become loss. But it is also a reminder that places can carry sadness without being consumed by it. By daylight, the waterfall belongs to the living. By moonlight, perhaps it belongs to the legend. And somewhere in the sound of the falling water, people still listen for two voices carried gently through the mist. So that was our last story. I will close up by saying Spain's ghost stories are not all the same. Some rise from places where history left wounds too deep to close. Some drift through buildings that have changed their purpose, but never fully escaped what they once were. Some live in folklore, carried through mountains, markets, theaters, palaces, and waterfalls until the legend feels almost as real as the stone beneath your feet. And perhaps that is what makes these stories linger. They are not only about apparitions in corridors or voices in the dark. They are about memory, about grief and love and justice, fear, and the strange ways places hold on to what happened there. From the ruins of Belchite to the halls of Madrid, and from Barcelona's underground platforms to the haunted landscapes of Catalonia, Spain reminds us that the past is never as distant as we imagine. Sometimes it is preserved in art, sometimes it is whispered through legend, and sometimes, if you listen closely, it's still moving in the shadows.
Now, we're not going to leave Spain quite yet. We'll be back in 2 weeks because, well, I was looking for ghost stories, I found a lot of cryptids and urban legends, and I just couldn't bypass them. So we just made an entire episode of Spanish legends and cryptids.
Yay! Yes.
Comments we need to address?
People love the stories tonight.
Yeah.
We love the stories tonight.
Yeah, I really had fun doing this.
Yeah, which is why this episode ran a little long. It's like, normally if we start getting a little on the long side, we'll trim a story here or there, but it's just like, I don't want to trim any of these stories.
No, and we still have enough to start doing another whole episode of just ghost stories.
Yep, so...
We'll revisit the ghost stories, but first the cryptids and the legends.
First the cryptids, and then I think we got some more states coming back.
Yeah, we're going to go back to Florida, because our trip coming up is actually going to be in Florida, a part we have not been in a while. So it's like, oh, we haven't told stories from this section.
We've actually never been there together.
No, I used to be in that area when I was younger because my grandparents would winter there. So we would visit.
I spent one night there. I went down for a conference.
And a hurricane.
And then an hour after I checked into my hotel, they canceled it because of an incoming hurricane. I don't know why they couldn't have canceled it before I flew down there.
But we're going to go back and make a happier trip this time.
I digress.
So
yes, thank you very much for watching.
Yeah.
And we will be back again in a couple of weeks. Hope you enjoyed the stories as much as we did.
Yep. And after Florida, we will start hitting states again that we have not hit before.
Yes.
So.
Yep. So until next time, have a good night, y'all. And if you are tuning in late, remember we'll be loading this onto our YouTube page shortly. So that'll be on there hopefully within the hour.
And you'll be able to catch the full storytelling.
Yep. So till next time, have a good night, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Stay spooky, y'all.